Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tate.
And I'm Raymond Peterson.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And I'm Alan Singer.
Educator, historian, Dr. Alan Singer, guesting with us, regular with us on Media Watch. Thanks for being here, Dr. Singer. Um, let's see what we can put in perspective because the circus, clown car, whatever we want to call it, is still proceeding apace. So, look, before we get deep into the weeds, let's just pay tribute to Pope Francis right at the top of the show, because if there was ever a guy who ascended to the papacy, who was a man of the people, who tried to do his best for the people, whether they were Catholics or not, and went out on a limb to do what he could for the planet, Pope Francis was that guy. So all I can say is, no longer practicing Catholic, but were I a practicing Catholic, I might have even tried to go to Rome for his funeral. That's how much I like that guy. You guys, you got the floor.
No, I'm like you, Eric. I'm not that good of a practicing Catholic anymore. But yeah, I did appreciate his uh, uh, he, like you said, he was a man of the people. When I saw the old picture of him riding the subway with everybody else, even though he was the bishop or the cardinal at the time, he wanted to be with the people. And even when he was pope, I think he drove from the airport in like what the equivalent of a Volkswagen Beetle. He didn't want to be in a big limo. He wanted to be, you know, just everybody, and every man. So yes, Pope Francis lived the life that he said he wanted to.
Yeah, I think he was a generally well-liked pope. I think he was, in my lifetime, I think popes are always popular, but I think that this one was extremely popular worldwide. And I think it's just outrageous what Marjorie Taylor Greene posted on, what's that?
Wherever she posts.
Yeah, wherever she posted it. I think it was X. Now, she didn't mention the Pope per se, but on the morning that he passed away, she tweeted, "Today there were major shifts in global leaderships. Exile is being defeated by, I'm sorry, evil is being defeated by the hand of God." That I haven't heard any feedback about that. Have any of you? I mean, it's just outrageous that somebody would say that.
No, there's been feedback, but the place there has not been feedback is from Republicans in Congress. She should be censured. And it's past time that there be a little bit of spine, and Republicans in Congress stand up to this kind of MAGA outrage. And this, because they are approving everything that Trump does. This is really scary stuff. And the Republican Party is no longer a functioning party.
The Republican Party no longer a functioning party. I think we've said that a few times on Media Watch in the past year or two, because they are who they are, and thanks to them and a whole bunch of other people, um, it's look. A lot of people voted for this guy and put him in office, and a whole lot of people stayed home because they didn't like the choices we had back in November. But the fact that he's in office doesn't make him an authentic president, because one of you quoted something about him that said, he said, "We don't have time for trials. Everybody can't get a trial." I mean, I hadn't seen that, but that is so outrageous about what this country was founded on, which was all men theoretically are created equal. Back then, they meant all white male landowning oligarchs, but they put it on paper as all men are created equal. And we've been trying for 400 years to make them live up to it. All men and or women and whomever are allowed to be treated equally, fairly, and justly under the laws and are entitled to due process. And the whole thing about not getting due process, oh, we don't have time for trial, is where we are right now on the stuff we need to put a microscope on. Alan, you actually came up with a great list. Let's start with Do we want to start with this battle with the judges, which might take up the entire show, but we're talking about due process. Let's talk about his battle with the judiciary.
Well, Eric, before you kind of mentioned that the clown car continues. And for a long time, I liked that metaphor, but I have to tell you, I can't talk about the clown car anymore because Trump and his people are making our lives unsafe, and they're undermining everything we know about the United States and protects our rights. A number of courts have now ruled that the Trump administration is illegally blocking funds, that the Trump administration had violated the law by deporting people without giving them a hearing. The United States Constitution guarantees due process to persons, and the Trump administration has refused to obey court orders, looking for ways to get around them or just ignoring them. That places this system that we live in at great risk. Now, there are people fighting back, and I think that's very important. There are judges who keep pushing. We have Bernie Sanders and AOC running around the country challenging oligarchy, and we have Harvard finally amongst the universities stood up and said, we're not just giving in. But the Trump administration is not backing down in its attack on American institutions. And I am afraid they are making our country unsafe.
Alan, the key one for me right now, they're all key. There's no due process. Underlying all that due process is constitutional principles, and underlying his battle with universities, for me, gets to free speech and the right to free speech. And so let's stay with that. Let's parse the free speech issue, because Harvard, in his attack on higher education, in his attack on universities, and these are high profile, quote, elite universities where a whole bunch of people with money send their kids and where a whole bunch of people without money get scholarships to send their kids. The bottom line is they responded with the fact that this administration was targeting the rights of free speech rights of universities and illegally trampling on their ability to run their institutions as they see fit. And so let's talk about these different battles, because they all boil down to attacking the Constitution and constitutional rights. Let's stay with the university struggle because it gets us to free speech rights for students, not just the school, because the Khalil was a free speech infringement because he wrote an op-ed, he wrote something. They claim he was in violation of a U.S. foreign policy because he was in sympathy. They phrase it, he was in sympathy with a terrorist organization, what he wrote or what he said. The school's pushing back, saying it basically was a free speech thing that you're trying to do a brown shirt attack and deport him without. Go to the university's right of free speech when he attacks them, Alan.
Well,
and while you do that, Alan, is it okay if I bring up that cartoon I had up?
oh,
a
yes,
second?
please do that. I'll wait for the cartoon.
Go ahead.
No,
Well,
keep
I
talking.
can start
Okay.
talking.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
yeah. Last Thursday, I marched with the New York City AAUP chapters and thousands of educators and students, workers, and allies from the Arch in Washington Square Park to Foley Square in defense of higher education. Now, we rallied to defend the First, the Fifth, and the 14th Amendments. We, as faculty, we asserted our right and our students' right to speak, write, learn, teach, research, associate, and protest. Now, after Columbia University's initial capitulation to the Trump demands, Trump then issued a whole new series of restrictions on Columbia. When Harvard saw what Trump did to Columbia, Harvard said, that's it. We're not going along with what you're demanding. Now, the Harvard University chapter, the AUP, has already filed a lawsuit alleging that the Trump administration is violating Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. Now, at Hofstra, where I'm a professor of secondary education, our administration signed an amicus curiae brief, along with 85 other colleges and universities, in support of the Harvard AAUP legal challenge to Trump and Rubio and Noem, and accused them of creating a climate of fear on campuses by targeting non-citizens, students, and faculty, with high-profile arrests of people based on their political views, of denying visas to international students. So a whole series of things they've attacked higher education. Now, just one correction, Eric. The person who wrote the op-ed was actually at Tufts University. It was a young woman in their PhD program from Turkey. And she has somehow managed to escape from their clutches. I think she may be in Vermont now or something. But the people from Colombia are down in Louisiana in prison. And one of the guys, his wife had a baby this week. And Homeland Security would not allow Mohammed Khalil permission to tend the birth of his first child. He is not accused of any crime.
So if they would gobbling him up in the dead of night, spirit him away to some jurisdiction that had no jurisdiction over this alleged offense, why would anybody think they would let him come to see the birth of his child? Why don't even go down that road? Because somebody else said it. These people aren't about law or about kindness. They're about cruelty and violation of law. Cruelty is the point. That's exactly what somebody wrote in an op-ed piece, either in the Washington Post or in the New York Times, which supposedly is fake news, but it was an opinion piece. The opinion piece was, this man is a man of revenge, vengeance, and harm. If he can hurt you, he will try to hurt you. If he thinks you hurt him, whether you did or not, he will try to hurt you. And the people that he has surrounded himself with are even more vengeful. Stephen Miller is a guy whose parents were immigrants, if I remember correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong, folks. But he has something up his rear end against any immigrant, legal or not legal. He is the epitome of the immigrant is other and does not belong here. And any cruel act that will drive them out he's happy to propagate, perpetrate, push forward. And he's just one of many.
And he's particularly hard for me to listen to sometimes. Sometimes I have to turn away from the TV when Stephen Miller is talking. Just to talk about the cruelty and the meanness, I'm just going to step aside to the recent Supreme Court decision on putting money back into the Voice of America, which the Trump administration tried to do. I just want to mention what the judge said. The judge said that the administration took immediate and drastic action to slash, the part of government that runs VOA, and without considering its statutorily or constitutionally required functions as required by the plain language of the executive order, which he should have known, and without regard to the harm inflicted on employees, contractors, journalists, and media consumers around the world. It's hard to fathom a more straightforward display of arbitrary and capricious actions than the defendant's actions here. The judge is saying the Trump administration does not care, and it's mean, and it's capricious, and that's where we are.
Look, it's so much. The Trump and Justice Department just canceled grants to community organizations for gun violence prevention and combating opioid addiction. They have ended research money for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency because they don't want research on climate. The measles epidemic is now the largest outbreak in the last 25 years. The Food and Drug Administration has had to pause milk quality testing because of budget cuts. And data accessed by DOGE without permission has now, data about us, our lives, has now appeared with logins from all over the world, including from Russia. I mean, our lives are being made unsafe by evil and incompetent.
So, Raymond, a couple of shows back, I think you were digging into that whole bit about USAID when they did those initial cuts. I
Yeah.
think memory says there was a long list of programs, primarily
Oh,
in
oh,
Africa and third world
oh,
countries,
my God.
where the funds were immediately cut off. The vaccines and the medicine that were being
Absolutely.
so
I,
in essence, when we talk about cruelty, when they decided they were going to slash and burn, supposedly in to save money, they were actually
killing people. They were killing people. People died as a result. People are dying as a result. People are starving to death. People have diseases that can be cured, but they're not getting the medication. This is insane. I mean, he's not only threatening people's lives, he's taking people's lives.
so let's circle back because Harvard's defense, not just free speech, they had a litany of stuff. Alan, if I remember correctly, if you've got part of their answer handy, they made an actual list of the type research because, of course, the administration, when Harvard said no, immediately froze $2.2 billion. And then they cut off another 7.8 billion or something to that effect, and also threatened their nonprofit status. But Harvard, in its defense that it filed with the court, Alan, if you could find some of it, there's a litany of the research that a particular health school at Harvard was doing because that budget was so large because they basically were funded for this kind of research that that litany of diseases, of programs, it's mind-blowing. If you could call that up, Alan, just to let our viewers get a sense. And I'm pretty sure some of it had to do with Alzheimer's. There were any number of really tough, not easily curable stuff that they were making great progress on. And when they came out with the litany, they said, look, it's not just about the school not functioning, it's about the lives that are going to be impacted just because this government is arbitrarily shutting down funding for programs that have a major impact on the health outcomes of people, not just in this country, but around the globe.
Well, and some of the medical research that's going to be cut includes research on cures for tuberculosis. It includes research on diagnostic tools for analyzing Lou Gehrig's disease, research on radiation sickness, which would impact on people going into space. I mean,
Didn't they also cut research on, they were making advances in Alzheimer's, weren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm
Alzheimer's
not
is
sure
one
if
of
that was
the
at Harvard.
yeah.
And
Um,
and when you cut research at one university, you can't just give the money to another university to pick it up
No.
because you can't just they don't have the same equipment, and a lot of times the
Or the
intellectual
scientists.
property belongs to the university. Right, they don't have the scientists. You can't just lift the money from one institution to another and have the same research. It does. What
Right.
happens, as you said, Alan and Ray, what happens is that you lose the research. Period.
Yeah.
right. No, a lot of, their attack on gender and sex, there's a lot of research that's being done in those areas. And that is something that
Oh yeah,
they,
gender research was on the list of stuff that Harvard said was
yes,
being targeted. Correct. In their health, that particular school of health. Um, so the arbitrary cutting of funds to these institutions of higher learning is going to have serious health consequences. Let's go back on the other side of, because Harvard is not only suing the Attorney General or whomever, they're also suing the National Institute of Health and
yeah,
places that was partnering with them on some of these research. And so the funding was coming through some of these agencies. And so they're listed as part of the people that are being, sued. But the National Institute of Health and those places are all being savaged by the DOGE cuts.
yes,
And so even as the administration is cutting funds to the universities, they're gutting the internal organizations that are charged with overseeing this kind of research and facilitating. I saw an article before we came to tape this show about the fact that Robert Kennedy's bureaucracy, what was he Secretary of Health and Human Services? They
yeah.
failed to alert the country to a recent E. coli outbreak in lettuce in about 15 states. They just didn't notify the entire states. They have been stopped their, I think you mentioned it, the inspection of milk
Yeah,
stuff.
Mhm.
They've cut back on any kind of food inspection across the board. Part of their cuts is to, never mind, we're not going to inspect food anymore. So all this craziness, to re-echo your point, Alan, is putting the country health at risk, not just the country, well, individuals who eat lettuce, who drink milk, who have to worry about
Wheat,
bacteria-filled food
wheat.
that's coming through all these processing plants that will no longer have any inspectors. All this stuff supposedly being done in the name of supposedly cutting fraud and waste and being done by DOGE, a bunch of 25-year-old wackos who are stealing our data and making the entire country unhealthy.
And unfortunately, this Trump administration is politicizing information. If you go to the government COVID-19 website now, it used to have COVID-19 information. Now, if you go to it, they wipe that information, and now it goes to a website with, of course, a picture of Trump, and it talks about how the virus was uh, released in China.
by
It goes into that.
Wuhan.
Wuhan, yeah. Yeah, it goes into that. And so rather than give us the information we need to stay healthy, it gives us that.
We
Uh,
don't have health info, we have propaganda.
we have propaganda. Yeah. And like Ray and Alan was saying, last year, was it last year? Boar's Head had that problem with their meats. I
Yeah.
stopped ordering sandwiches from delis once that broke out. So you're telling me that
Me too.
had that broken out now, I'd be home with food poisoning.
We're in trouble. We're in trouble.
Yeah.
We're in serious trouble. Segue, since this is called Media Watch, let's do a
Yes.
quick update. I don't know how much time we have left on all
We
this.
have 4 minutes. Go ahead, Eric. We have 4 minutes.
So same administration and talking about people bowing down. Look, 60 Minutes, flagship show for CBS News. Bogus suit was filed by Donald Trump about them being favorable to his rival in the election, Kamala Harris, former VP. And it was a bogus lawsuit. Everybody knew it was a bogus lawsuit. Everybody just basically laughed it off in the media sphere and figured CBS would get it tossed. But they didn't even try to get it tossed. The Shari Redstone, the head of Viacom, which actually owns CBS, she basically started talking about let's do our settlements with this guy, and basically she's settling because they're trying to do a merger with Skydance or something or other. Paramount and Skydance are trying to merge. There's billions of dollars at stake, and so instead of saying go jump in the lake, we'll see you in court. He's saying, well, I don't want to antagonize him. So yeah, let's settle. So she then, according to a report I read today, because we're taping this the Wednesday before our Monday air. We didn't mention that at the top. And today's date is like the 23rd.
Yes,
23rd.
it is.
Of April. Is going to air in the following Monday, which would be like the 28th on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, wherever. But I read something in today's news across my news feed where the bottom line is she does not want to antagonize the Trump administration because she wants that merger to go through. And she started looking at all of the 60-minute segments that had anything to do with Trump, like micromanaging how they were being put together and what they were. And so the executive producer of 60 Minutes says, you know what? No, if I don't have any editorial independence anymore, I'm gone. So he resigned. And the bottom line was, he said, I'm sure the show will go on, blah, blah, blah. But no, the show's not going to go on. You resigned because you didn't have editorial control. That's why you quit. What makes you think the guy who replaces you is going to regain that editorial control? So the Orange Julius in the White House is succeeding in making these media companies now bow down because they're worried about bottom line and money. You said they caved in the past, Bob.
I'll say it briefly. Years ago, decades ago, Howard K. Smith of CBS did a story about Birmingham and the racism there. And the honchos at CBS didn't like the way he was reporting it. So at the end of the day, they fired. The story went on, but they fired him. So yeah, CBS has a history of this, caving so that they don't lose money, and in that case, also affiliates. They're afraid they lose stations. And with that, we have about 45 seconds left.
Yeah, so the media companies are all bowing down. And even though they bow down, it may not save them because Meta is still being investigated by the federal government for what? Monopolistic practices. Google is being investigated by them for monopolistic practices. Sarah Palin just lost her second round with the New York Times, claiming they defamed her, and the jury said, no, you lose again. So, but that doesn't stop them from pushing these bogus charges and these bogus cases. So anyway,
And,
look,
and
we're out
with
of
that,
time.
we're about done. Yes,
We're out of
yes.
time. The media has to try to continue to stick up for the rest of the country. We may not be able to, but we will keep trying on Media Watch. I'm Eric Tait.
I'm Raymond Peterson.
I'm Alan Singer.
And I'm Bob Anthony. Catch up to us on YouTube at Media Watch EVT.
And we'll catch you the next time, folks. Stay safe.